What's up, guys? It's absolutely fantastic to have Molly Curtis and Roman Cassidy on the show today. Roman's been here before, terrific guy, fellow college Republican. We got Molly here. Both of them are from UMaine Orono. Molly's a member of Turning Point. Over the course of today's episode, nothing too crazy, but we're going to get into kind of our lack of, I guess you could say, full approval of what's been happening in D.C., some of the things that are going on here in the state of Maine, and why we should advocate for conservative principles. So, Roman, go ahead and give yourself a little bit of an intro.
Yeah, so like Sam was saying, my name's Roman Cassidy. I've been involved now for about half a decade in mostly local Maine politics, although I've done a little bit on the national stage as well, with campaigns here and whatnot, door knocking, phone calls, web seminars, trainings. I'm a conservative, like he said, and my big thing is trying to get people involved and active, in the state of Maine, so we can flip Maine completely red, but as well as, keep the national stage more conservative leaning as well, if at all possible.
Sure. Molly, go ahead.
So my name is Molly, and I am currently run the Turning Point USA chapter at the University of Maine. And I am involved in conservative politics mainly because I see a need for common sense and reality. And conservative politics emulates those perfectly for me.
Well said. Now, Roman and I, we've known each other for quite a few years. Molly, for you specifically, when you say something's conservative, broadly speaking, give your definition of what a conservative is.
Conservatism is inherently rooted in tradition. You have practices that are traditional, but they're traditions that make sense. They're traditions that adhere to facts or processes that are conducive to a functioning society. That is conservatism. It is keeping our traditional values and our traditional ways of doing things in the system, because we don't need everything to be progressive. That seems to be the goal right now, is to make everything progressive, which is not something that I believe in. I believe that progressivism oftentimes kills even the best traditions that we hold dear to us.
Sure. No, for sure. So that's a rock solid definition. Roman, how about yourself?
Yeah, so kind of like what she was saying, I definitely think, there's a time and a place where the country may have to evolve on certain issues in certain circumstances, but I think overall, though, what the founders envisioned for our country was a very good model, and it was I think divinely inspired. Like our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, and our foundation as a country. And I think ultimately we should strive to have not only a society but a governing system that governs off of the people are sovereign. We keep traditional values like in the family, in the home, in our municipalities. And keep things fact-based as well. We don't need to be coming up with new nuanced garbage and stuff. So keep things, like she said, traditional, family-valued, God-centered, and country. Love your country. Don't feel guilty for liking the country you were born in because of stuff it may have done in the past.
Sure. Now, Roman, you're with college Republicans. Molly, you're with Turning Point. What have you guys done, with your respective groups on campus to advance the conservative side of things?
You want to go first?
Sure. We typically focus more on the ideological side of things, more so than policy, because we are a group based in conservative mindset. We focus on principles and not necessarily, who to vote for, how to vote for them, to have those principles happen. It's just establishing a foundation in the youth to talk about, free markets and freedom in general, and the things that make America inherently American. So on campus, one of my favorite things to do is to host speakers that present on a variety of topics, such as protecting women and girls' sports. That's been a big one recently. We also are having a pro-life speaker come to campus, which is very exciting. And I hope to have many other traditional valued speakers come and present.
Now, being on the campus you guys are on, reality is I've got it pretty good. I'm a Maine college Republican, but I'm going to Liberty, so I'm all the way down in Virginia, and I'm on one of, if not the most Christian conservative campuses, almost in the world, you might say. You guys are in a little bit of a different environment. What has been the response to college Republican and Turning Point efforts? I know they're slightly different. You know, one's more focused on the candidate, one's more focused on the ideology, but you're going to get the same opposition, and you guys usually kind of mesh in terms of the crowd you're in.
Yeah, so kind of on that, even though we're not technically, we're not sister organizations, our two groups are definitely conjoined together very often. And we've obviously done stuff together, but basically it's usually the same crowd of people, the same pushback. We get a lot of pushback up here. And unfortunately, it's very negative usually. Even when we try in a very peaceful, conversational way to kind of give our point, like where we're coming from. Unfortunately, we often get a lot of pushback and feel, we're kind of in a point where we'd like to people just to like hear where we're coming from and not necessarily, immediately jump on the hate train, if you will.
Sure.
But unfortunately, usually it's pretty negative pushback up here.
Roman's being too nice. It is directly harassment. We get a lot of threats, direct threats, people saying that they think that we deserve to die, that we don't deserve to breathe the same air as them, that we should feel unsafe walking down the street. And quite frankly, there are no repercussions. These people oftentimes can't be identified because it's an anonymous post on an app, or they, say it to their friends or make a poster and it gets around. And nobody's getting in trouble for, directly breaking the First Amendment's, only discretion where it says you can't incite violence or threaten anybody's life.
Wow.
Yeah,
so
a lot more blunt and to the point, but she's absolutely right. I used, it's negative, but yeah, definitely. We've gotten to the point where they've gotten to death threats. That's how bad it's gotten.
Jeez, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, for a regular, say you just had a regular Turning Point meeting, are you getting opposition for just the meetings, or is it more, focused? I don't remember if it was Turning Point that brought it to campus, but I know Riley Gaines was on campus at one point, and Representative Laura Libby was on campus at one point, and both those events specifically drew in a pretty significant crowd. I mean, what's the reaction? Is it always negative just for a basic meeting? Or is it really more focused on the big speakers?
Well, Sam, there was one time someone said that they were going to show up to our Turning Point meeting to, quote, incite terror. Mm-hmm. So nobody actually followed through with that, but that is the sort of thing that they like to say. Versus when we have a speaker event, that actually draws out a pretty violent crowd. They are definitely very fond of profanities and screaming.
Now, you say a violent crowd. Has there actually been violence or just threats of it? I'm glad. I hope you say just threats. I mean, I guess that's better than actually having it, but...
We've definitely had we've had a lot of aggression. I think the big thing that keeps it from actually tipping over into violence is we've been lucky. We usually have security and police force with us. And I can't say this one with 100% certainty, but I feel as if those cops weren't there, that it probably would turn to violence. We've had some very close encounters, people very aggressive, the anger's very high, tempers are very high, mob mentality, when there's large crowds, we're talking 150, 200 people there for a cause, So like I said, I can't say that with 100% certainty, but I definitely feel if we didn't have our bodyguards and security with us, that it probably would turn to physical violence.
Wow. That's crazy. I'm guessing that brings a little bit of a slightly different perspective for you, Molly, too. I mean, Roman and I being conservative guys, I think we're active, but we don't have to always have safety in mind. Being a young woman in the movement and getting those type of threats, would you mind developing on that? I mean, reality is you've probably got a bit of a different perspective than some of us.
Yeah, I typically get called out, like direct name drop online when they're talking about Turning Point, because I'm the name that they associate it with now. And this is why I advocate for women being able to carry. And especially on campus. Like right now, women aren't allowed to carry on campus. Nobody's allowed to carry on campus. But I would feel 10 times safer if I were able to carry a firearm just in case someone decided to attack me, because everyone knows what I look like. Everyone knows, like, probably where I like to go on campus. People are noticing these things. People have looked me up online. People have looked at my family online. It gets to a point where you start to feel so noticed that it almost becomes unsafe.
Jeez. That's crazy. So everyone's noticing except for university leadership and law enforcement, basically.
I think at this point, even the university law enforcement is aware that we deal with harassment. We had some issues with property, I don't want to say damage because they were just flyers, but defacement. They would rip down our flyers and throw them out or show themselves ripping it up. It was really ridiculous. It was a display, for public approval. But we have reported people to UMPD, and they have been dealt with.
Good. Well, thank you guys for being vocal and active. Like I said, I'm kind of spoiled where I am. I'm not disconnected from Maine politics, considering the fact that I'm still active and have been active for a while. But in terms of college campuses specifically, I've got it good. So thank you guys. Now, specifically for the positive side of things, what type of gains have you guys seen? I mean, it's easy to focus on the negative. Have you guys seen any inroads with people?
We've definitely gotten more members, of course, than we had at the beginning of the year, and we've also had some great opportunities for students. May not necessarily be directly on campus, but I know we've had a lot of career, but also I don't know if I want to use the word job opportunity, but professional opportunities, at least within the College Republicans Club. But we've also, both clubs have been able to and are having fairly big names on campus. We're actually having Steve Forbes from Forbes magazine at the end of this month. It's College Republicans. So I'd say, off campus, the professional opportunities like trainings and seminars, but also like working with representatives and senators. And then on campus, both groups have been able to have some pretty good speakers. Which luckily, do get a crowd, mostly negative, but we also get some supporters too that, get to listen to these speakers that they wouldn't usually get to see, here in Maine.
That's
Sam,
fantastic.
It's funny. I've had a lot of people reach out about Turning Point and ask me about joining the chapter or becoming more active, but then they don't follow through. And so, you see this base of people that you could be getting, but they're not going out to pursue the endeavors that your club is, attaining.
Sure.
And we don't know why. We don't know if it's time or if people are scared. Because for me, if I saw this crowd of protesters and I saw the opposite side, I would be scared based on what they say about us. I wouldn't want to go out for that. I wouldn't want to associate my name with anything that's getting threats like that.
Sure. That's nuts. The fact that you have to consider your safety just to be able to be vocal. As cliche as it sounds, I guess that means there's, active. We need to be active in reaching out to people, but pray for the people that are on the opposite side. Yes, pray for folks on our side to be active, but pray for those that are that vocal and that angry to experience some sort of calm within their soul. Because that type of anger, we've all been angry. That type of anger doesn't come just on your average Tuesday.
Well, especially when it's people you don't know from a hole in the ground. Like, I literally know none of these people. They don't know me. I'm just a regular average Joe college student, and they treat me like I'm like public enemy number one. Like, they're threatening about wanting to kill me. It's like, you don't even know me. We're both like young adult college students. Like, what? It's insane,
It's too bad, because if they took the time to actually have a conversation, you might find you agree on absolutely nothing, but you can get along. I'll never forget the time, would have been back in 22. I was campaigning for Governor LePage and Bruce Poliquin. Knocked on a guy's door. Chill guy. But then he found out I was a Republican and he started cussing me out. He was mad. our training is to leave the door. Just like, okay, you lost the fight. Well, being the idiot I am, I decided to, let him cool off for a second and keep talking with him. Turns out it was about the best thing I could have done. Usually we're at the doors for about 2 minutes, roughly. I was there for about 10. By the end of it, you would have swore he was my best friend. This man's a middle-aged man that he opened up and he's like, dude, I'm sorry. I took my anger out on you. Basically, everything in his life was falling apart. And so at that time, I'm 21 now, he was just talking to some 18-year-old kid, didn't agree with him on anything, but got a chance to vent, and then ended up being a great conversation by the end of it. We didn't agree on a single thing, but there was that sense of unity by the end of it, just because we were able to have a conversation.
Mm-hmm. And I think you're right when it comes to these people being broken. You're seeing a lot of pent-up hatred and anger, and genuinely, I don't think it's meant to be targeted towards us. I think it starts internally, because a lot of the people that protest us, they're definitely struggling with mental health. They're struggling with dysphorias of various types, and this is very obvious. This is a mental struggle, and I don't hate any of these people for that. I am very compassionate and sympathetic towards their perceptions of themselves. I think that would be a miserable way for me to live if I were so, confused and sad all the time. So I think that as conservatives, it is our job to be gracious with these people, because, it's definitely a struggle. We're going to reiterate that. It's not normal to be that angry all the time.
Now, okay, so we've got, I think I kind of know what you were alluding to within the some of the things you said. You go back 6 years ago, 2020, the LGBTQ movement was raging. It was popular, for the lack of a better term. Now, as of 2024, roughly, that seems to have died off, at least on the public stage and even in places like Hollywood. Not that it's not present, but it's nowhere near as blatant as it used to be. How is that on a college campus where I'd assume it was pretty common just a few years ago?
So, yeah, it's definitely still here. I know there's quite a few clubs, political clubs, but there's also other social clubs, if you will, involved with the LGBTQIA+ that aren't necessarily political. They're more just, clubs for members of that community to get together and just hang out. A safe space for them, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, if they feel safe, and if they feel like they can kind of come together. So I found there are clubs that kind of just leave us alone, and then there are other ones more on the political side that are actually out there in our face. There's I don't want to categorize them all together, because I've seen there are some clubs in that community that for the most part just kind of leave everything alone. They kind of just exist, and there are others who are definitely prevalent. I think you'd agree that are the ones out there being vocal, coming after us.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you on that. That we have an LGBTQ dorm. We do have multiple
an entire
LGBTQ
dorm
clubs. Yes, there's
Wait. Let me get this straight. A dorm that's friendly towards the community, like you can have some folks there, or just an entirely just LGBT sectioned off dorm?
Essentially, entirely an LGBTQ dorm. It is marketed as the LGBTQ dorm. It does have a few random floater people in there, but yeah. So there's that, and then there is obviously the plethora of LGBTQ clubs, which honestly, I think Roman has a point when he says that, everyone should find their group of people. However, a lot of the material that these clubs spread on campus is just blatantly inappropriate. It is so inappropriate. It focuses on, sexual orientation and generally just sex. And they post videos online. Children might find that. Who knows? Yeah. No child needs to hear about how to have safe anal sex from a video that a UMaine LGBTQ club posted. I think that that's where it crosses the line a little bit. I think that if you want to, have group meetings together, like whatever. We have group
Colleges are a
meetings.
place for higher education, aren't they? So why are we
Supposed to
posting
be.
stuff like that? Also, I hear the term safe space. First, I roll my eyes. Second off, if you're on a campus like that where things like that are being glorified, how unsafe are you? I know political violence, both sides of the aisle are technically guilty, but you two right there are the folks that have to worry about your safety.
That's what I'm saying.
Why don't you guys
I
get
mean,
safe spaces?
it gets to a point where are you ever going to feel safe no matter how many safe spaces you have? Because they're always saying that they don't feel safe on campus because of people like us who are just doing our own thing. They clearly have their safe spaces, but are they really effective?
They need God. They need Jesus.
Amen.
I think that Roman, I know you're a born again Christian, myself. Molly, if you don't mind me asking, where do you stand on the faith side of things?
Yeah, so I'm a very in-depth Catholic.
Okay.
That one might shock people, but I am very Catholic.
But still, I'm on the Protestant side of things, you're on the Catholic side of things. Still, though, there's a recognition of a higher being. When you realize there's something higher than yourself, there's going to be some sort of intrinsic change within you. Even if you don't accept Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, you're going to recognize, oh, there's something more.
He asks for reformation. He asks for people to change and not stay as they are if they're in a state of sin.
Exactly. That's something I never fully understood. Mental health struggles. There was a time in my life I hit a wicked dark point. And I don't usually talk about it a lot publicly. But Jesus was the solution. It's been a few years ago. And everyone told me, you pray and you pray and okay, I'm praying, I'm in church, it's not making a difference. But full submission to Jesus, slowing down, letting go of me, fully submitting and trusting in when I didn't know what was coming. Did it mean the anxiety left? No. Did it mean the depression left? No. But I had the tools to get through it. And these people that are suffering, quite frankly, their safe spaces are the closest thing to hell they can provide on this planet. Reality is. That might be a bit drastic, but it's not that far off. The reason they don't like you is because you're one step close to everything I just described.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus made that very clear that we were going to be, hated because he was hated first. And unfortunately, they have no grounding, obviously, from a spiritual level, which is going to affect their physical and especially mental level. So yeah, and you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, these plethora of safe spaces are, they're not fixing the problem. You're in a space kind of like you mentioned with church. I'm in church every Sunday. It's not making a difference, until I have that full surrender. Well, it's the same thing. I'm in my safe space all the time, every day, everywhere, and everything's about me and my community. But you can definitely see there's still a struggle. So yeah, there's definitely a higher answer there. I'm hoping more people on the campus will find that, but.
No, definitely. Well, thank you guys for being active and being the light. I mean, you look at a lot of the folks in Scripture who are active, they didn't exactly have the most glorifying endings or reactions. So, even our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So, thank you guys. To switch the topic slightly, we've covered a lot of things on, how you guys are active on campus, the reactions you've got, the moves you've made. Let's look at the national level. We all are young conservatives. I voted for President Trump back in 24. I've been active in politics since 2022. Roman, you're only a little bit younger than me. You've been active for a long time as well. Molly, I'm assuming the same for you. How are you guys feeling about things down in DC right now?
I'm trying to think how do I want to go about. I will say I am disappointed. However, in our disappointment, I want to make it clear that doesn't mean I'm complete. Like, I don't want to ever use the term like appalled. You know, like, you can be disappointed, but at the same time, you don't necessarily have to reject everything you've known and believe. If that makes sense at all,
Sure.
you know what I mean. I use the analogy of, like, if you're a parent and you have a kid, there will be times when your kid disappoints you. Doesn't mean you throw your kid out of the house. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, with certain things going on in DC aren't exactly what I had hoped for, exactly what I'd campaigned for. However, I try to remember there have been good things that have come out of this administration, a lot of good things, especially in the first term as well. And I have to remember that, no one's perfect, and, it's much better than the alternative we could have had. And I think we've got some internal fixing to do, maybe, in some of the conservative groups, especially in upper-level politics. But I would also encourage people, though, not to completely disregard or throw out everything just because things aren't exactly going the way you'd hope, if that makes any sense.
Sure. How about yourself, Molly?
So where I'm at, I'm going to look at this as not really like a policy issue at the moment, because my biggest problem from DC, and this is a blanket statement, is there is a lack of decorum. Nobody has the regular decorum that they should have. They are rude and they are obnoxious and they curse and they post inappropriate things. I mean, this is the highest level politics that you get in America. And we are seeing very immature, very non-professional items coming out of DC from both sides at this point.
Yeah. No, fair enough. I think we all were at a point where we didn't appreciate mean tweets, but we kind of, I guess, let them slide due to the, cost-benefit analysis. We didn't like it, but whatever. We've hit a point where, I guess you're not wrong, it's both sides. President Trump's got his typical way of posting, and it's drives me up the wall sometimes. But you look at the stuff coming from the other side. I mean, you look at the amount of profanity that's in the highest level of politics in our nation now, it's kind of appalling. I mean,
It's disgusting. That's
Yeah.
the best way to describe it. It's inappropriate, and we are definitely being looked down upon by other nations.
I understand if you're going to deal with, let's say, a more hostile nation or a terrorist group, you got to be able to speak their language. But at the same time, you should be able to do that from a righteous way. Speak tough. I understand that. Sometimes decorum has to be somewhat, I guess you could say, modified in order to speak someone else's language. At the same time, open the bleeping straight, you crazy bleeps. Really? Really? No. And I don't know. I guess I look at it from the perspective of I voted for no wars. Obviously, if there's a conflict, you're going to have to do what you got to do. I'm not saying you can't ever use the military. But I didn't want to see the conflicts. We got wars. There's been some stuff with abortion and Title X funding. The Epstein files have been an absolute debacle. I wanted the cost of living to go down. I haven't got it. I wanted gas prices to be what they were before the pandemic. I wasn't at voting age at that time, but I was in high school. I remember driving an hour one way to high school, and I looked, the gas station about halfway there would always adjust its prices right before I got to school every morning. And we got down, I think, below $2, if I'm correct. In the middle of friggin' Maine. Where does that come from? Why are we above 350? Why am I looking at
$3.99 here.
What's that?
It's like $3.99 here. It's almost $4.
Exactly. I'm going by Virginia standards right now. There's a gas station down this way called Sheetz, and they've got a cheaper version of gas. I think it's just because it has a higher ethanol count. I could be wrong. Point being, I'm looking at gas that costs just over $3 and saying, well, that's a heck of a deal compared to the regular 87 that's up in the 350s range. And now you guys are saying it's almost $4. That's insane. And so I guess I haven't been fully satisfied, to put it lightly. I wanted no new wars. I knew there was some, you look back at some of the posts, there was a potential of an Iranian conflict, but I really didn't want the conflict. I wanted to maintain our reputation on abortion. I wanted the low cost of living. I questioned if we'd ever get anything on the Epstein files. I think we got more than we ever really would, but he did say he'd release them. There have been some major things that we were promised, especially as young conservatives, and young people, broadly speaking. You guys and myself probably fit on the pretty hardcore conservative side of the aisle, reality is. But there's a lot of folks, especially young men I'm seeing, and Molly, you might be able to, speak for more of the ladies. We saw President Trump as someone who's different. I see people older than us, and I want to know if you guys have seen this too. Our parents' age and older saying, oh, well, other politicians have done it too. Yeah, I get that. But he was marketing himself over the last 10 years for being different. So the first president I ever got to vote for, I thought was going to be what a lot of Republicans and Democrats have promised to be in years past, and make it so that we could afford a house. I haven't seen what we were promised. And I'm disappointed. What have you guys seen, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, right now we're in a very weird place when it comes to politics. Usually I can keep up pretty easily, but it is going at such a fast pace. There are so many changes. I am even confused as to where we are right now. What's going on with Iran? What's going on with Venezuela? What's going on with Israel, Palestine? I'm all over the place. I can't keep track of all of this. And meanwhile, my gas is rising. I don't know if when I graduate, I'm going to be able to buy a house. It's just the affordability of America sucks right now. Yep. It's not efficient for anybody. I'm a, full-time nursing student. I work part-time as a CNA at the hospital. So I'm a pretty busy person. Plus I run a club part-time. And here I am getting a bill of $850 for my rent every month.
Holy!
And it is one of the nastiest little apartments you'd probably see. It's meant for college students, but it's not worth $850. But that is what I'm paying for it. And yeah, it's not an effective way to live. It feels like I'm suffocating under all of these expenses because groceries, factor that in, that's $100 to $200 every week. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is not how young people should be living right now.
No, I agree with you. Go ahead, Aram.
Yeah, I definitely think I'm in the same boat as her. I'm very confused because of the Trump we saw 2017 to 2021. I feel was almost a different person, and there may be things we don't know behind the scenes. I'm sure there are. I mean, I worked in national politics enough to know there are, but it's almost like somewhere along the way he just became almost like another establishment. Like the Trump we're seeing now, I feel like is not what we had and not what I campaigned for. I didn't get death threats and ostracized from different friend groups and stuff for this, like she's saying. I mean, we're almost no different than we were under the last regime. I mean, yeah, affordability is crazy, and now you're seeing these younger, I usually see it with conservatives, but I'm even seeing some younger liberals as well who were basically saying both sides need to be just torn down and both sides have failed us. And I think there's some truth to that, and it's kind of a mess. And like she said, affordability's not much better. Accountability is lacking, I think, at all levels of politics. So yeah, we're in a very confusing mess where you've got young people don't know what to do. They don't know what side to flock to because they think both sides have failed. You know, we've got promises broken. So.
Can I add something on that real quick? You just made me think about something. If you look at like political ideology maps for the left versus the right, you're going to notice that the left has a much more compact perspective map and the right has a much wider, bigger perspective map, which means that we are more all over the place with our opinions than the left. They're more concise and united in their opinions. And the right is more spread out and probably argumentative over what they believe.
Oh, there's no probably. You show up to a Republican meeting, and if you expect anything to get done, sometimes it's a pipe dream.
And that might be the problem.
I hate to admit it, but sometimes we struggle to get along.
That might be the problem, is we are not united enough. Our party doesn't exactly have those outlines of what we believe. And that is why Roman said people are confused at which side to flock to. He's right. They're seeing all these mixed opinions. Like, this person says, oh, I'm a Republican commentator. And then this person says, oh, I'm also a Republican commentator. And they disagree on a very fundamental issue, like abortion. You know, you have Donald Trump, who says he's a Republican, who he's more pro-choice than we probably assumed. And then you have, you know, me and Roman, who are pro-life Republicans.
Yep.
And that's essentially what it comes down to, is when are we going to have a mindset where we're more united in our belief system?
Well, I have to give some credit in terms of unity and functionality. I took a shot at Republican meetings a second ago, and it's been disappointing over the years to go to Republican meetings and either see no one there or see them semi to relatively decently filled, you know, a decent-sized meeting. 50% of the people there, they want to win. 20% are on the fence, and then you've got a few that they yell and scream. I'm sorry, but they make it miserable. And it's everywhere from the county level to even higher levels of Republican politics. Whereas I think it was the State of the Union, the Turning Point chapter here on campus at Liberty, they put on a watch party for it. It ran like a well-oiled machine. And, you know, having my origin in the political world being with the Republican Party, I always felt like I was trying to make a Model T win a NASCAR race, using equipment to win a race that wasn't going to be able to be won because the machine didn't work. Whereas the Turning Point chapter that put this event on, it was well organized, the people were welcoming, it was well attended, everything was perfect. And I have to give credit to these private organizations. Students for Life is another one. They're doing fantastic. And so kudos to you guys on campus, and Molly specifically with Turning Point. Thank you for doing what you're doing, because sadly a lot of Republican organizations at county and state levels have failed us.
And if I'm being honest, Sam, like, this is why I'm in Turning Point. I tried college Republicans out for a little bit, and I realized that I had more disagreements with people in that group than I do with my current Turning Point group. And I think that this is why I will say, when people ask like what I believe, I say I'm a conservative. I don't say I'm a Republican, because genuinely, like, what is a Republican at this point? Conservative is pretty like concrete. Yep. Everyone knows what a conservative believes. They're conservative, what we described at the beginning of this podcast. But Republican could mean anything now.
Hey, you know, you used to be able to say it was rhino versus hardcore conservative, but I think you hit the nail on the head. And this is coming from the former Maine GOP vice chairman. In terms of party politics, reality is, at a young age, I got pretty high up there. And now I'm at a point where I'm saying, yes, I'm a registered Republican, but I focus on the candidate now more than anything. I found a candidate for governor. I'm backing Bobby Charles as much as I can. We've got state Senate candidates from my district there. Roman and I are actually in the same state Senate district. I'm backing Chad Perkins. He's a rock-solid guy. And the other candidates are good people, but Chad's the best one by far. Chad's the type person where I moved down to Virginia for classes, and he called me and said, "Hey, Sam, how'd the move go?" A federal level individual would almost never do that. And so it's really seeing the lack of success from D.C., it's forced me to focus on the candidates. And you hit the nail on the head. The name Republican does not mean what it used to. Roman, you was going to say something. I kind of cut you off. My bad.
No, you're good. But I definitely wanted to agree with Molly there. And also the point you bring up is I've shifted a lot of my focus to more local level politics because I'm so appalled with upper level party politics on both sides. And I never would want to necessarily become an independent per se, but she's absolutely right, is I think both sides, and unfortunately the GOP as well, it's just very disappointing, with profanity and no accountability and frankly not even helping us with any of the promises, or fulfilling any of the promises they had promised, or a big chunk of them. So yeah, she's absolutely right, is I identify conservative first. I think it was actually Vice President Mike Pence that did that. He said Christian first, then conservative, then Republican. And I like that model he's got there, because she's absolutely right, because you're going to find a lot more unity underneath the term conservative than you are Republican. And I feel like it's got less flack to it. It's more unified. It actually gets things done. And, and kind of like you were saying as well, is the GOP is not, I think, what it was. So I've also as well kind of shifted my attention more away from federal and more to local because, they seem to be getting things done and we can get these little coalitions together to make the state better. So,
yep. I think there's also, it's going to be easier to win people over. A lot of folks joined the Republican movement or even joined the party itself during the last election. The younger group, our age, a lot of Gen Z is voting now. And we're not happy with what we've seen. We wanted the success of our grandparents. And so neither party has been able to deliver it to us. Okay, let's not look at party name. Let's look at the candidates. You analyze the candidates we have for governor alone. None of them on the Democrat side of things want to fix things. They want to keep them the same and make them worse. I hear talk about public housing. I'm like, well, why do we need more public housing? Why can't we just lower the cost of living, lower the cost of housing, and people will be able to live? Why do we have to be fully dependent on Augusta? Why don't we lower the cost of living? Why don't we actually lower taxes? Let me keep more of my money. It's as simple as that. It's not that hard to do, but we need people that will actually do it. Hey, Bobby Charles' whole campaign slogan, cut crime, cut taxes, no nonsense. And I'm not asking you guys to, endorse a candidate specifically, but it's perfect. It's simple and it makes sense. Forget it. Notice I never mentioned the name Republican there. So reality is, if you're going to win a higher level office, you probably have to be associated with one of the parties. But who cares if it's a D, if it's an R, whatever. But I look at all the candidates on the Republican side of the aisle. Bobby's about 17 million points ahead of the rest of them. But still, the majority of them still have pretty good ideas. Bobby's just the one with the capacity to win. The other side, reality is, they're saying everything that we don't want. Almost everything they say. Troy Jackson's a nice guy, I'll give it to him. But he's a fraud. I don't want a fraud. Shannon Bellows ripped Trump off the ballot. And quite frankly, personally, I think the Secretary of State shouldn't be able to run for office while they're serving as Secretary of State. If you're in charge of elections and you clearly have proven you have no accountability, she shouldn't be running for any sort of office.
Well, Sam, we're dealing with her again in other campaigns. Have you heard of the Protect Girls Sports campaign?
I've heard a bit, and there's something coming up right now, isn't there?
Yes. So basically, I went to the State House this morning to testify for the legislative document that is going to essentially be voted on to make it so that boys compete with boys and girls compete with girls.
Yep.
Sex-based facility and sport separation. And the reason we were out there testifying is because Shanna Bellows decided that it'd be a really good idea to reword the document so that it was nothing like the original proposal.
Oh, so this is still connected with the referendum question then?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
And I heard about
Yes.
you mentioned the testimony. I'm like, wait, is this not the referendum question or not?
Oh,
Okay,
it
so I
is.
see what you mean. Yes.
Her rewriting was horrible. It was manipulative, and it was very biased, in which that is why we had to go and testify about why we need the original wording kept.
Yeah. Huh. She drives me nuts. Like I said, I could give Troy Jackson some credit. Reality is, forget politics. You could go out and hang out with him, and he'd probably be a chill guy. But you look at some of the financial stuff he's done, he's a fraud. So that kind of hurts him. Shanna, she's corrupt. Hannah Pingree is just another one of the members of the establishment. None of them are good options. And so, yeah, reality is Bobby Charles, he's the best pick. Best pick by far, and I think he's the most appealing towards young people. Reality is, I think you pitch any of them. Bush, all of a sudden you hear the name Bush, you think of George Bush. That's not a good brand. The other guys, they're nice people. They're respectable people, but they don't have the capacity to win. Bobby says, hey, I want to lower the taxes and make your community safe. It doesn't matter what age you are. That's an appealing message.
I think there are other candidates, too, that have particularly caught my eye, at least.
Yeah.
I have looked into Garrett Mason a lot. He is a young candidate, which is why he's particularly interesting to me.
Sure.
Because as someone who is one of the younger generations, the youngest generation that can vote currently, he is very appealing to me because he's very conservative, very pro-life, very transgender, whatever. And that's why I think that he's an interesting candidate that also is running.
Now, there's some candidates in the race that I think can be respectable people personally, like Robert Wessels. I know the guy. You know, when he was the first person in the race, I got the chance to meet him a couple times, and as a fellow brother in Christ, terrific dude. But looking at the spread of candidates as a whole, with the amount you mentioned Mason, probably a nice guy. You know, you meant the ideologies you mentioned. I didn't disagree with a single thing you said. But why aren't the polls reflecting it with those people? You know, and I have to speak highly of Joel Statkiss, you know, being with Bobby's campaign. Joel knows what he's doing. I'll give him credit. And, you know, sure, I was vice chairman under him, but on an objective level, Joel knows what he's doing. And the polls have reflected it. Wessels, great guy. Really low in the polls. I think he should run for state office and gain more name recognition and more experience. And then he'll be a force to be reckoned with. But right now, it's not going to work. Mason, probably not a bad guy. With the amount of money that's behind him and having Dale Craft's endorsement, he should be skyrocketing in the polls. I didn't know who he was until about 5 minutes ago, reality is. I know he has a history in Maine politics, but, I mean, Jim Libby's been in politics for a while, too. And as a 21-year-old guy, I'm like, who?
I don't know who that is.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. He's been a state senator for quite a bit, or at least has been, and just dropped his bid for governor. Another candidate that we didn't know. Reality is, I think there's a lot of good people in that race, but Bobby's
So this is maybe our sign that Gen Z is lowly informed on their local politics.
Oh, for sure.
And with that, like you said, you seem to have very almost undying support for Bobby Charles as a candidate, which isn't a bad thing. But on the converse side of things, you don't exactly know much about the other candidates. So I think as a whole, Gen Z and other generations of voters obviously need to make sure that we are more informed. Maybe that is why our parties are so divided.
I definitely think we need to do everything we can to reach people our age. You know, I you take the three of us talking right now, we kind of might fit into our own little bubble of, oh, everybody our age knows what's going on, and then you start to talk and you're like, oh wait, you don't know that? You don't know who Charlie Kirk is? What?
The amount of people that still say they don't know who Charlie Kirk is just baffles me.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily all their fault. It's just not the world they're in. They see how crazy it is, kind of what you mentioned. People say, hey, I'm interested in Turning Point, then don't show up. They have the same ideological standpoints, but it's not a world they're interested in, or they just don't want to be in it. They might agree, so they're disconnected, so we need to do everything we can to reach them.
That's why clubs like this exist.
Exactly. But no, I definitely, I think there's a lot of work to be done. Definitely a shift from, I used to be able to say I'm a proud Republican. Now I'm, yes, a registered Republican, but heavily focusing on the candidates. But there's definitely a shift, but I think it's a good shift, reality is. Roman, I want to hear what you think on this. You and I talked about it in the last episode we did, but let's see, in 2030, I could run for Congress. I'd be at the age limit. Say a whole wave of people our age did that. About 2030, 2028 roughly. Do you think we could bring reform?
Yeah, I think so. Because, like we discussed earlier, I think one thing that I've seen that unites me with some of my more liberal-leaning friends is we're both sick and tired with both parties. Yep. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to become independent, and we're obviously not going to, we're not going to agree on much. But I think I've seen some of my liberal friends and obviously conservative friends saying we're kind of done with the status quo. We don't like this establishment on both sides. Both sides, we're done. And so if they can bring that energy to a campaign and then win, and obviously bring some, youthful energy as well, try to get some of these older folks out of D.C. and make it look less like a nursing home. I definitely think, especially considering these guys have had good lives. I mean, you think about the boomer generation, baby boomers. I mean, they were able to get a house, usually on one income. They had good jobs. We still had industry. The economy obviously had its booms and busts, but overall fairly well. They went through some hard times. You got to think, the wars and 9/11 and stuff. But overall, I'd say fairly good. We don't have this. It's almost like an uphill battle for us. So I think that gives our generation and maybe millennials too, but definitely Gen Z, some incentive to run and say, okay, we just got to basically take the entire thing, burn it to the ground, and restart and reform. I mean, that might sound a little harsh, but I think, so I just don't think some of the older politicians really have incentive. They get in office, but they've had, not all of them, but some of them have had it very easy, and it hasn't been an uphill battle for their generation. So there's not always incentive. It's like, oh, I keep my seat, but I just kind of sit here. And on both sides, and I think that's what we're seeing. They're just kind of parking themselves there and just sitting there. So I definitely think our generation can bring reform. We're just going to make sure, like she was saying, we stay united. And try to lessen the infighting and stuff, and just focus on getting good candidates, and not necessarily party first, but candidate first, and trying to turn this thing around before it's too late.
Well said. Well, I don't want to cut things short, but I originally had told you guys, before we started recording, it would be about 20 minutes, and we've gone for a solid 53. So I have a tendency to do that. I bring people on the show. I say, 20, 30 minutes. An hour to an hour and 20 minutes goes by, and we finally wrap it up. So I will give you guys a shot to kind of give a closing statement, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Thank you again, Sam. This was lovely. I always enjoy being on the show. I miss having you around, so I look forward to when we can get back to work here in Maine together. That'll be good. And I definitely think there needs to be some change and stuff, but I try to keep positive. I definitely would encourage people to get, start working on candidates and try to put partisanship behind us, because I think that's how we're going to move forward. I look forward to working with you, and of course, Molly, always a pleasure to work with her. It should be good.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you for having us on here. This is a huge step for Gen Z conservatives in specific. to be able to see other Gen Z conservatives being outspoken. You know, we are bridging that gap, and we are creating a path that makes it a little bit easier for other people to follow and figure things out.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys. I'd love to have you guys back on sometime. You know, Roman, this is your second time, and there's probably going to be a lot more. So, hope to have you guys on again soon. Thank you guys so much. God bless.
Thank you.